like I said, we're in the midst of going over what postmodernism has claimed, and it kind of has taken the opposite approach of what materialism has done, which says that the physical world is all that there is, and this is kind of saying, well, there are areas of the mind, the non-physical thing that the Romanticists brought out and have said we haven't focused on enough, so much so that they've kind of said the things aren't really the things.
Right. So they focus on the mind. So all of this comes out of the Enlightenment period. So materialism comes out of Enlightenment. Romanticism is kind of a reaction to the Enlightenment thing, right? So Enlightenment focus on physical things. Romanticism, as she mentions, focus on mind or spirit and that sort of thing. And so that's where postmodernism kind of got its start out of the Romantic movement.
Right. So. And so we see that the Romantic era has moved from an idealism through a series of successors, which Nancy Pearcey is not going to take time to discuss here, but it gives birth to this postmodernism. The irony is that Romanticism was embraced to counter Enlightenment reductionism. Postmodernism has become equally reductionist and inhumane. And so that's what we're going to identify. So the rules that define acceptable ways to speak current today's, and as 2020, we're kind of in the midst of it more now so than ever, which is odd because the political divide seems to be everyone chanting that they have truth on their side, but it seems that within the scope of academics, within the scope of kind of the popularization of what is coming out of secondary education, truth seems to be kind of on the back burner. And so that's what postmodernism kind of focuses on. They focus on race, class, gender, ethnicity, sexual identity, so on. So kind of the big three are race, class, and gender. And so if you have heard critical race theory, that tends to be what this kind of stems from. So I don't necessarily know if people would identify themselves so much more now as postmodernists, but they would kind of probably focus on feminist theory or gender politics theory or what have you. So those are kind of key terms to pique your ears if you're listening for what worldview is someone espousing from this. And so postmodernism virtually defines a person's identity in terms of what group he or she belongs to.
So that's an interesting point there, right?
So where materialism kind of focuses on the inner person as far as on the outer world,
right?
And the things that are out there, and you're just one of many things. Right. Postmodernism says reflect inward, but at the same time you're not individual within yourself. You are part of your race group or your sexual identity group or however you define that. Right. And so whether or not you actually fit those things, can be hashed out even more, so much so that you see people who are identify as females, and then you have people who identify as females that don't wear makeup as being a bifurcation within these groups to kind of get as detail specific as possible to see who falls on the spectrum of being influenced against by society at large. Right. And so so the absolute mind that Hegel or the spirit that Hegel is kind of known for, it expresses itself through community's laws, morality, language, social relationships, and so on. He took Kant's idealism, in which the world is constituted by consciousness, but for him it was a collective consciousness. So you aren't really kind of a person here; you are part of a collective.
That's right.
Kind of Borg-like, continuing on our Star Trek theme. The absolute mind
Part
creates
of your
the
community
yeah.
kind of thing. Yeah.
The absolute mind creates the world through the shared aspects of culture, society, and things like the above shared language. Hegel's individuals do not have original ideas of their own. Their thoughts are merely expressions of the absolute mind. So here you have kind of collectivism, communism, viewed not so much on a economic scale, but on a social scale, which is something that people like Lenin and for a lesser extent probably Marx would also agree would happen as well. While Marx was probably more focused on the economics of it, you had Lenin that probably viewed more societal change like this. So over time, Hegel's pantheism was secularized for his absolute spirit and reduced to a metaphor, the spirit of the age, the zeitgeist, that they are not producers of culture so much as products of a particular culture. And so who moves culture is kind of up in the air as far as where these ideas come from. Individuals are shaped by the communities they belong to, each with its own shared perspectives, values, habits, language, and forms of life. Individuals are little more than mouthpieces for communities based on race, class, gender, ethnicity, sexual identity. Postmodernism absolutizes the forces of culture and community. Truth, then, has been redefined as a social construction so that every community has its own view of truth based on its experience and perspective, which cannot be judged by anyone outside the community.
Yeah, so the community in this instance then becomes the idol for postmodernism, right?
Right.
The community, the culture, perhaps, something like that. Right?
Yeah.
And so that's what the focus is on.